All we do, push the button.
Good enough. We're officially Zooming and broadcasting.
Yeah.
Hey, we will begin then. Welcome everybody here that's here. Regular City Council meeting, February 9th, 7 p.m. We have in attendance council members Turk, Monson, and Nielsen. Council member Bowers is not available, and council member Perkins will be zooming in later if she's not here yet. Are you here yet, Katie?
She's not on
Okay.
there yet.
Will somebody will let us know when she shows up. But we do have quorum without her, so we can proceed. We'll begin with a prayer or thought by Dave Johnson, followed by the pledge.
Our dear, kind, and gracious Father in heaven, we are grateful that we could come here for this city council meeting. Grateful for our elected officials and for this community that supports them, and pray that thy spirit will be with us this evening to make good decisions in behalf of our residents, and that we can create a good quality of life for those that are here. And these things we pray and thank you for in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, this council had occasion to review the agenda and the minutes. Are there any corrections or questions? And we've made a slight change where technically we're not approving the spending, the expenditures. Those have to be approved before they're spent. And we're going to be addressing that a little bit later on. So we're getting them for FYI, but they've already been duly approved in order to have been spent.
I think there may have been a question last time, this, on the page 8, the Royal from construction one, that was sewer.
As the sewer main participation.
Okay.
Yeah.
That could have been a question we asked already, but that's all.
It's fun to see people taking advantage of that, because it seems to be doing what we wanted it to do.
A motion that we approve the consent agenda minutes and financial, well, that
You
doesn't,
can approve it.
it doesn't say it this time, sorry. From January 26th, 2020.
I'll second that.
Yeah, it's Monson and Turk, all in favor?
Aye.
Sounds like everybody that's here. Okay, moving on. If there, council member Nelson, has the staff got you in on a declaration of conflicts of interest? Have you filled out that form?
Yes.
Okay. So then, as a part of the agenda, we always have it here just to remind us that if there's anything on the agenda that would bring up that specific conflict for any member at the table, that now would be the time to say, we're going to be discussing this item and I will have a conflict, and you can discuss it even with the conflict, but normally people would retire from that conversations. So moving on, is there anybody wishing to address the council in open forum from the public? We have all staff here. You're also public if anybody wants to. We're glad to hear. Okay, seeing none. Right into reports. The only thing I had to report was the meeting with Larry Ellertson, Congressman John Curtis' office. He's the small government and rural areas and land use guy for the congressman. And I think it's good. They're out here. They're beating the streets. They're getting out and talking to people and trying to see what our concerns are. We talked quite a bit about the the image and the impression that people have of the city relative to Bears Ears and how we believe we're largely misrepresented in that and what our concerns are. I don't know, Councilmember Monson and Dave Johnson were there if you wanted to add anything to kind of what the conversation was.
No, I feel like,
Yeah, I think what you said, Mayor, is just having them help locals express what the true concerns are regarding the Bears Ears issue. And then also we talked about just the housing shortage that we have in our area and hopefully being able to get some help to address some of that here.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything that's been, they wanted to make a report on?
And we have Councilmember Perkins just joined us.
Yeah, okay, I noticed that, so good to have you here, Katie.
And I guess, did you see, I don't know, maybe this is an appropriate place to bring it up, but Phil Lyman at Other State?
Yes, with the visitor center.
Yeah, is that, I
So.
mean, is that an opportunity to maybe help rectify that situation? You can try and get the visitor center here, or is that?
So we actually, that's interesting timing, because as staff, we actually met with BLM today, who are, will have some, basically they have a few positions open for liaisons. They already have a liaison that works with Edge of the Cedars, but one of the things that they want that liaison to do is potentially work with us at the visitor center to educate the public about Bears Ears and how to properly care for the area. So that news article is very interesting timing because, and I believe Pratt's already sent an email to the state representative, but our visitor center, we're already looking at doing some of those things. So we'll probably join in conversation with that. So we can have, the main focus of our conversation with BLM today was we want to create some consistent messaging with all the surrounding communities about caring for the area and that approach. So.
Okay, well, we'll have to see how that rolls along. Any reports from staff or administration?
I don't believe I have any reports. I think staff has their standard reports that they'll go forward with.
Okay.
As per the packet.
I think we might want to, when we do that, let's list those
You
specifically.
still want them listed?
So we kind of can follow through that.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
Go ahead.
So the staff reports that we have today are water, finance, and recreation.
Right.
And police.
Oh, and police, sorry. I was trying to help them get out of it, but you guys.
Mine's stapled in on the top, so I'll go first, I guess. January 2021 water report. Our snowpack is not looking great. We're about 76% of average. Unfortunately, we're only about just under 60% of average on actual precipitation for the water year. So going into the snowpack, we were pretty dry, which is indicative of less runoff as the snow melts. And then we've already had a little bit warmer temperatures even in this past week, which also is a great situation for our runoff. We'll be looking to just kind of manage that direction. I believe that it's probably pretty safe to say we won't have a green water year this year. We'll be encouraging conservation through our water rates in some way, whether that's yellow or orange, I guess remains to be seen. We'll have a better idea as we approach the 1st of April.
We set a date by which we normally are going to fix that first week of March, or am I remembering
April.
right?
April.
First week of April.
So we'll kind of look that way. David and I will, recommend we'll probably have to start pumping here pretty soon. Some of the water that we have in recapture up to the 3rd in preparation for not very much runoff before irrigation season starts.
what, does it hurt us at all by pumping that? I mean, if we pump and then we get crazy amounts of snow.
Yeah, I mean, there's a financial cost of pumping, about $40 an acre foot. So, it's a little bit of a gamble there. $4,000 or $5,000 that we could eat, but it's probably on
What's
the
the
flip
latest
side, if
we
we
do
don't
now?
have the water and then the irrigators start using, we won't get the water.
Yeah, I would venture to say $4,000 or $5,000 gamble's worth.
When do we start that?
I'll work with David on that. That could happen as soon as the next couple of weeks or just sometime, through March. I need to look at exactly how much water we need to fill the third. We're down right now, almost 150 acre feet. I can't remember off the top of my head how many acre feet we can move per day.
So Terry,
But it's going to be several weeks, 2 to 3 weeks of pumping.
what's the acre feet that we need in the third to sustain either way?
We could probably get by with only 200, but we like to be pretty well full for the parks, cemetery, churches, et cetera, that's on that raw water system.
Any other questions on water? Okay, thank you, Terry.
Yep.
Looks like we got Chief Bradford coming up.
Had a chance to review the reports I put in, but we were a little bit busier this month versus last year at this time. A couple things that did not transfer over are dog incidents. I don't know why they didn't show up on it, but we picked up and returned 4 dogs to owners, and we had 1 vicious dog that had bitten a couple people that had to be destroyed. So, Officer McDonald's wife had their baby, so he's taking a couple of days off, and he's a proud new papa. So, any questions for?
8 DUIs is quite a bit, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not a good start to the year. I mean, you
Continues
guys
to
are
be an
working hard,
issue.
but it's-
Are we still seeing a lot of domestic stuff too?
they've sort of settled down some. I don't know if people are just getting away and,
It's gone too cold.
yeah.
Let it warm up.
Yeah. DUIs is always, we seem to just get more and more all the time. It's a little scary.
Mostly local people, or is it you tourists?
It's a mix, local and people just traveling through, so.
That's a good question. Is there a way we could look year over if the increases in tourists or in locals?
Yeah.
That might be something good to look at.
We can leave those up and bring those numbers back next time.
Have you started seeing more people coming through? I mean, I don't.
We're seeing a few. We've actually seen a few new folks from overseas come through.
Well,
Not many, but we're seeing a few. And they're driving fast like they always did before, so. We're seeing a lot more people coming to start recreating early.
yeah.
Okay, any other questions for Chief? Okay, thanks.
David Palmer.
Are you running with that? Or?
Yeah, David Palmer's out today, has something with his family. for the next
State
couple
drill
days.
team is going on today.
Right. So, Council, you might have noticed that we didn't bring the capital projects back to you, and part of that is because we were looking into the ball field as well as the shade structures in the pavilion. And I'll start with the shade structures in the pavilion, and as you'll see in the report, it basically says that the bids that we had are outdated. And one that he was able to get in still seemed pretty high. So he's just waiting to get some more bids back. He's gonna look at through the state as well. And then as far as the ball fields, we had Dura Edge come out. He's looking at getting some other consultants to come look at it as well. Good news is, so first we're waiting to get some bids from them, but the good news is they believe the existing dirt that's there, kind of that crushed lava rock, would actually, we don't have to take it out. We could use it as a base for whatever needs to go on. Because a lot of times, if you've ever even, when you put down a road, it's kind of the same concept. You kind of have your base and your different layers.
That surprises me because it stirs up so easily. It seems like it mix in.
Well, one of the things that they said is as we've been, when they take their laser levels, what they notice has been happening when we rake the infill, what's been actually happening, you don't notice it with the eye, but we've been creating a bowl. And that causes to some of the stirring and things. So what they would do, and I'm speaking very layman's terms here, is they would just level it out, compact it down, and then put the new layers on top. So it should be a cost savings, and they seemed really confident in it. Dura Edge is like the top of the line stuff. So if they're confident in that I didn't expect Dura Edge to say that, to be honest with you. I expected them to say, dig it out.
I think that's what they did on the baseball field, actually. Was just,
Yeah, yeah. And so he's trying to get those bids, but the key with this and just the capital projects in general is we have to bring it to you before or by next council meeting so that we can basically have that ready for the CIB funding. And now it, like Kim mentioned the last council meeting, this is kind of, it's flexible. So if things have to change, this is saying, this is what we're prioritizing now. And if we have to amend or change things later down the road, that's perfectly fine. So you don't have to feel pinned down by this, but you're just saying, hey, this is the direction we're trying to
Well, it
head.
doesn't necessitate getting a bid. We just need something so we can put the placemaker in there and say, we're gonna be in this range.
Exactly.
And we take the most competitive bid lower than what we allocate
Right.
so that it stays within the budget we have for it.
So we'll see what we have by next council meeting, and we'll kind of run with it and let you guys decide.
Kind of get to the edge of our thing here as far as the pavilion and stuff though. Don't we need to be acting on that soon or?
Yes, and that's why I had him getting bids right now, is because those ones that we did have were outdated. But I think what you're getting at is that's if we, to be completely frank with you, I don't think we're gonna get those built before the start of, or by the end of this fiscal year.
With steel prices going up, I think that it's gonna be ridiculously priced as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm, yeah, and that's what I'm concerned about. So we're still shooting before the end of the year. We're doing everything we can to get those bids and see if we can get some reasonable bids. But even if it's in next fiscal year, we're gonna shoot for August of next fiscal year.
Yeah, we talked about that last time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so.
So how outdated were those bids?
It was last year this time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Is that much?
At least 9 months.
9
I
months
think-
to a year.
I think it was about July of last
Yeah.
year that Jeremy got those ones.
Yeah, so that kind of fed into a little more delay, but either way, take confidence, capital projects will come before you next week and we'll move forward on it.
On that infield dirt, the parameters in my mind I set up where we want something that does the job at the lowest ongoing maintenance cost that makes sense. We don't want to get something that doesn't do it.
Right.
But we're also not Fenway Park. We don't need, if there's grades, we want to pick the grade that the guys would really say, yeah, this is your best bang for the buck, without going
Basically
to the
finding,
ultimate solution.
right, finding that equilibrium between the lava rock that's out there and the
You
top.
can spend so little that you wasted your money, and you can
I
spend
think
too
it's
much.
good news that we don't have to dig that out.
Yeah, I think so. Hopefully other vendors that he's talking to will have a similar sentiment.
We'll know
That surprises me.
We'll know how good the news is a year later if it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
worked.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, okay, other than that, the rest of recreation report, it's in the packet. If you have any questions, we can get those questions to David and get back to you on those things.
Okay, anything specific we want to look at there? Or are we moving on? So what, we got finance left?
So the finance is just the invoice register, and Logan already asked the question
Oh,
about
okay.
the,
So that's where we'll slide that in.
Is in the
as far
staff
as- Okay, it'll be in part of reports. Gotcha. Yeah, that's why we get to have the bullets out here under staff and then indicate those, so it tracks you more easily when we're going through.
We'll make sure.
Was any other questions on the expenditures? Okay. All right, moving on. Don't have a public hearing. So discussion items, polling location. This was Cheryl's item, and so we have plenty of time to address this.
She did ask if I would talk about it.
Oh, okay.
Because kind of how it came up is when we were talking to the Lieutenant Governor's office, that was one of our things that we talked to her about. a little. I mean, that's kind of out of their control, kind of, just because it is a county issue. But we just talked that we, by population, are one of the largest communities in the county and don't have a polling location here. So we wanted to, I guess the idea behind Cheryl putting this on here is would like to get a letter of support from the council to send to the county, just telling them that we feel like it's a need and would like to see a polling location here in Blanding.
Okay, and I think we should. I think we should keep asking for it. I asked them for a polling location each of the last 2 elections.
Yeah.
You asked the county, is that who?
And the response both times was the same. Essentially, it boiled down to 3 things. The relatively short distance to Monticello, 22 miles, where, you know, a lot of other places are further away. They also don't have one. So I'll mention these, not that I'm agreeing with them, they're just the reasons that were given. And so if in our request, we try to address these concerns the county had, then maybe that improves our odds. The other one was the cost of having polling locations and what that entails. A great part of the cost was the third item, which is interpreters. It doesn't matter where the location is. If it is in San Juan County, not the courthouse, an interpreter is required by court order. And it's not just anybody that can interpret. They have to have these very specific certifications. And the county has really struggled to get interpreters for those areas that they're required to have one already.
And they're expensive.
So finding another one has been really difficult. And so those are the 3 hurdles the county would have to overcome in order to make it work. But I think we should still ask. I know there were people who did not vote in the last 2 elections because they came expecting to be able to do that. And they didn't have their mail-in ballot, which we will deliver for them. If they drop them off, we'll deliver them.
And we
But they didn't have their mail-in ballot, so they weren't able to cast their votes. I know there were votes lost. I don't know how many. But
I think probably the biggest frustration with that is when you sit in a city that's divided 3 ways, your elections are divided 3 ways, and now the people that have a commissioner in each one those are the people that aren't voting as much, that are already divided.
yeah.
So, I mean, 22 miles, yeah. I mean.
So if we can kind of address each of those concerns and say, you know, in our communication, say, we realize there are these hurdles, and kind of make our case based on that, you know,
Yeah.
and see what we can do. But we have asked each of the last 2 elections, and we didn't get it.
Yeah.
But
So who gives a certification for an interpreter? Is that the state or the county?
I don't know. I wouldn't dare speak to it. It's some election
I just wonder what's
thing
involved.
from whatever level, I don't know.
Well,
It might be from the tribe, like the.
Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know.
we can find out, we can look into it and find out what that would take.
Yeah, because there are people who could maybe acquire the certification.
Yeah.
There's lots of people around here that speak.
No, 22
English.
miles is nothing if you have the means.
Yeah.
But if you don't
Or
have the
the
means,
time,
it's,
you know.
it's a hardship, so.
Um,
I would
we have
pursue
So
it.
when you think of that, though, then you go up to LaSalle and Spanish Valley and all that, and you go, well, what about them? So if they create one here, then do they also have to create 2 or 3 more?
Yeah.
And so all of a
How
sudden, you
far
can,
out does the interpreters have to go? Is it just
every location.
Navajo, Spanish?
Well, yeah, that's what's.
Yeah, see, that's still,
No.
Yeah, I know.
so what would be the requirement here? Navajo?
Well, that's the only requirement. The other languages aren't a requirement.
Okay, but that would be the interpreter.
Right.
Yeah, the county provides an actual drop box, correct? For them.
They did last time, the day of. when
Yeah, they brought a
asked that.
lockbox.
They brought it in the
Yeah,
night
so-
before the election.
And it wasn't, we had asked before, like we had asked several, because, I mean, people could vote for a long time up until they brought it, but the day of is when we finally got an answer from them, right?
Well, they told us they were being and then it would be here the day of the election and come in the night before. So it was here first thing in the morning, and then we took it over after the polls closed at 8. So it was here all day long. People could come in and drop off.
Yeah.
We actually had more come and do that this time around. Of course, it was a presidential election than we have in the past. We took more. I was afraid the box was going to be.
So regardless of what response we get from the county and whether they can do that or not, we still need to really educate people to use those mail-in ballots, and you can bring them to us and we'll have them delivered for you.
And I'm gonna see if the county can bring that, not just the day of, but maybe a few weeks in advance. Up in Saratoga, we did the same thing, and the county would provide a drop box at each city location, even if there wasn't a polling location, and it would sit there for a month prior to, and the county would come by and get it. I'm fine if we run those up to the county, but I don't know that we need a month ahead or whatever, but we can figure out.
A little
longer
extra
term.
time in there. But it'll, I mean, we can do a lot to make sure people are educated as to how to get their vote in.
So my question is, in the past, that letter, who's put together that letter? Is that come from?
Jeremy and I did. We
So-
made the request.
Is there consent from the council to put something like that together?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah,
There's no reason not
Katie, you good with
make
that?
the request.
Yes, I'm good with that.
Okay, so that's 6 out of 6 people here
We'll move
want to
on.
ask them, so let's ask them. All right, okay,
Thank you.
excellent. Okay. Discussion items policy. All right, we'll let you explain what that is.
So, Mayor and Council, we talked about this last city council meeting, and essentially this is just, we had 2 routes that we could go. We could make a standard work session at the beginning of every meeting and just open and close the work session before the regular session. Or we could put together an ordinance and just identify the discussion items during city council meetings that no formal motions or approvals can be made on those items. And so that's the consent I got from council. That's what we put together. I don't know if there's any questions on or issues with the language, but we're just going to put it under the meetings, procedures, and conduct section of city code.
Since we are with this changing city code, that would require a public hearing. So what
Yeah.
we're doing tonight is saying, do we like what we're getting here and should we send it to public hearing?
So we would need a motion. to
It'll
send
take
it to
some
public
time.
hearing.
is there, I mean, there probably is a reason, but is there a reason why we didn't have this before?
Because to be honest, most cities do the work session thing. That's that end of regular meetings. And so that's why I was, when the mayor preferred this route, that's why I checked with our city attorney, okay, what would we need to do to make it this route? Because I've not seen it that way. I've only ever done the work session route.
So one thing about the discussion items is you can take action on discussion items, not action that requires a formal motion. For example, we had a discussion, we could have a discussion about sending a letter to the county. Doesn't require a formal motion. Consent says, yeah, let's send a letter. So it's not that you can't do the business of the city on discussion items. It's only those that require formal motions.
Right. So for example, I mean, the main example that I gave last time was just, if there's a policy that needs to be changed, that we as staff aren't sure which direction the council wants to go before we formalize a policy to present, we would put it as a discussion item to say, hey, council, there's a few ways to go. Which one would you like us to go? And this discussion item policy is ironically a good example of that. I would have suggested going the work session route, but the mayor told me his preference and the council as a body agreed. So that's the route we went instead.
What we're ending up with is really the format that Mayor Turk used. He always insisted that things always come as a discussion item and could not be acted on in the first meeting, but could always come back then as an action item. So by practice, he did that. And I kind of like that. I opened it up and made it a little more flexible. So now we're actually kind of going back to what Mayor Turk was doing, but we're making it a formal policy rather than just we kind of understand this is
So
how
what,
it
what has
is.
to happen after tonight? Say, okay, I make a motion, we accept this, then it goes, you said.
So we go to public hearing in the next meeting,
To see if the public has.
and we could then, approve it.
So I can say, make a motion that we proceed to the public hearing.
Right.
Okay, I'm gonna make that motion. I'm gonna make a motion on ordinance 2021-1, an ordinance regarding discussion items that it goes to the public hearing.
I'll second it.
Okay, that's Turk and Nelson, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
There you go, Katie.
The one distinction that I would add from what the mayor was saying of in practice that Mayor Turk did is that this does not require every item be a discussion item before.
So Mayor Turk had another good ordinance, getting out of here at 9 o'clock. Can we do one of those things?
That was just his personal preference. We almost always make that, though.
Yeah, we
It was
will,
the
we'll try
bewitching
not to
hour.
repeat the last council meeting.
Yeah, that was unusual. We knew it was going to be. Okay, so that's moving forward with all in favor. All right, financial officer mayor designee amendment. Okay, I read that and I thought we talked about all the stuff and maybe, and I don't know what that is.
So
Remind me
essentially,
what that is.
this plays into the next item, which is our purchasing policy. But we were going through code on purchasing, and we found out that even though I'm appointed as the budgetary officer and I'm the mayor's designee in every capacity as far as running the city, for some reason, under the financial officer, the code did not say or designee.
Oh, I don't remember that.
And the other thing in that same code is it had a fixed dollar amount of $8,000 of a spending limit. And it identified an exception for Utah Power and Light, which no longer exists. So what we said here, let's just have this code be more generalized and refer to the administrative policy for spending. And then in general say, with the exception of power and gas invoices. So, if, say my spending limit, which you'll see in the next one, is $25,000, but we're getting invoices for gas of $100,000, I don't have to come to you for approval every time on that because we just know that that's a fixed cost that's going through. And that basically was already in code. We're just, all this and the next item are really cleanups. There's no significant changes. It's just cleanups and catches of things that maybe are conflicting. So,
Yeah,
and
we had, and a lot of this discussion on these spending limits came around and we'll be addressing the thing that drove this discussion we'll get to probably at our next meeting, right? Yeah, it was a little surprising to go back and find an ordinance passed in 1978 with a spending limit within the budget. So that's one thing we have to understand. These are the spending limits of the city administrator within the budget. If it's not in the budget, he has no spending authority on that. If that's outside the budget, it's coming to us regardless. So anyway, it was just kind of funny that no check can be written over $8,000 except to UPNL without prior authorization from the Blanding City Council. So I don't know how many hundred checks we've written in violation of that ordinance since 1978. So it's good that we're cleaning it up. What we're doing has been proper, but not technically legal. And so we're fixing that.
so similar to the last ordinance, this and the next item both will be a motion to go to public hearing.
Want to do it?
Sure.
Throw a motion out there.
So you said, I make a motion to, is it to send, how do you phrase it?
Ordinance number.
Motion to send ordinance 2021-2 regarding financial designee to public hearing.
So make a motion to send ordinance 2021-2 regarding mayor financial officer designee to a public hearing.
I'll second it.
I'll second it.
You got beat to it over here. Yep. So that's Nilsson and Monson, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's everybody. We'll move it along. Purchasing procedures amendment.
Okay, so Mayor and I were having just a couple quick discussions, being new city manager. I need to know what my spending limits are. And so I started doing research, trying to find out what are some typical spending limits. Kim provided me our administrative policy that showed those spending limits. And I was putting it all together to present to last city council meeting. And then I decided, let me double check state code and let me just pour through our city code one more time. And I found that we already had city code with spending limits that left some holes open for spending and somewhat conflicted the administrative policy. So the main gap in the administrative policy is it said what the limits were, but it didn't say who approved it at those limits. The main gap in the code was that it said who approved, but there was for example, if you look on that first page of the staff report, you'll see that 8,000 plus, meaning it could get up to $500,000, doesn't need, as long as it's within the budget, it doesn't need to go to council. It's just a department head could approve it. It didn't even have to go to the city manager to approve it, which presents some issues. So basically we took both policies and what we did is we identified what are the spending limits, let's make them consistent, and who approves at what levels. And that's on the second page of that staff report at the bottom, the second and third page. You'll see that we differentiated supplies, materials, and equipment, and that's kind of how the code did it. Because, for example, for supplies and materials or equipment, if you buy $5,000 worth of, or let's say $4,000 worth of computers, well, that should be a big question mark. You should probably get bids on that. But if you need to spend $4,000 for a contractor to come in and fix a doorway that's like, fall out of place or something, well, $4,000 is probably not that much. I'm just making up some examples. So there's distinction between contract services and maybe like supplies and materials. But we tried to keep the levels the same. So anything under the $25,000 mark needs 3 verbal or written bids. Anything and approved by the city manager, which that's consistent with current city code. $25,000 mark was on the city manager. And for the department heads, a $5,000, anything above $5,000 just needs to come for the city manager to approve. I need to look at what their 3 bids are. Now, a clarification, and let me just finish. Anything over $25,000 needs to go through the formal bidding process and must be approved by the city council.
So on the other one, you said you have to inform city council up to $24,999.
Exactly. So yeah. So if I get 3 bids, say we're doing the shade structure. Say we're doing the shade structure and they come in, although they're not going to be this low, they come in at $20,000. I'll work with staff. I'll select the contractor. I'll approve it, and then I'll tell council, hey, it's $20,000. It's within the budget. Here's who we went with. Easy. Now, if it's $26,000, I would try to convince them to go to 24, so we don't have to bring it. But if it's $26,000, then it would go to council. We'd have to do a formal bidding
I'm sure
process.
that would be incentive enough for them.
I know, right?
Conveniences.
Now, the one caveat to this, similar to the mayor's thing of it, as long as it's within budget, is say you approve a $200,000 project for streets. Well, once that's approved by council, then the department head, similar to like the gas and the power, the department head can just sign the invoices for those. Of course, I'll be checking those invoices to make sure, and so will Kim, make sure there's no funny business going on. But the department head, even though his spending limit without a city manager approval is $5,000, he can still sign the invoice because that contract's already been gone through a formal bidding process, been approved by the council, and administrated by the city manager and the finance director. So basically, we're just making it more clear. What are the parameters for spending and approvals, and taking what we already have and just cleaning it up.
So kind of in a nutshell, other than just bringing stuff into the administrative policy in line with the code, in line with the state code, is that before the main control we had on the spending was the budget and just good judgment. And that's worked really well for a long time because people do tend to have good judgment. But it leaves this open for somebody who does not have good judgment. It left us open for a department head to maybe shuffle their budget around, not spend this and spend it over here on, things that might not have been good judgment. So really getting a little more structure to it, I think protects everybody involved. So it's really clear what the limits are and what the approvals are required to do that, rather than just saying, wow, that's quite a bit of money. I think I better ask the council.
Right.
You
I mean, to be honest, on some of these things, no good city manager would say this, but it'd be like, I don't have a spending limit. I can just go out and don't have to take it to the council.
we actually kind of had that.
Yeah. And then ironically, there were a couple other things in this current city code. For example, competitive professional services, no limit, but every competitive professional service had to come before city council through a formal bidding process. So even if you were bidding for something that's $1, our current city code requires that to go to city council and do a formal bidding process. So obviously that doesn't make sense on a practical level, so.
Okay, so are there any questions on that format, and do we want them answered tonight, or if we had questions, come in and talk to Dave and Kim and.
So this would go to public hearing too then?
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
So I'll make the motion, we take ordinance 2021-3 and ordinance regarding purchasing procedures to the public comment.
I'll second it.
It's Turk and Monson, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
She is. Okay.
I did have one staff item that I just remembered.
Okay.
So it looks like from the polling for the photo shoot for the council, new photos, it looks like tomorrow night at 8 works the best. I gotta eat after you did the poll.
I could do it whenever, I just.
Sit whenever. The only person I didn't hear back from, Mayor, was you, but I assumed you would be able to make that.
I think so.
Okay. And I'll have Pratt send out the location where you need to go and everything. Or wait, I think we're doing it here. Well, I can't remember if we're doing it. Are we doing it at
I
our
just-
studio?
I didn't get any traction with mine to just come 30 minutes early next time.
Yeah. Well, I'll have Pratt send out the information. I can't remember if you're going to the person's studio, if you're coming here, but he'll send it out. And let you know.
I'm getting my second COVID shot tomorrow, so I'll try not to be grumpy.
Hopefully you don't just.
I was gonna say loopy.
Yeah.
So we're, okay.
So make sure you get, Councilmember Turk already set the example. He got a nice haircut.
Right.
You want to look good, feel good,
What are you saying,
represent.
Dave?
Yeah, you're looking kind of scraggly these days.
I told my wife that we were getting pictures and she's like, you'll cut the hair. And I'm like, nope.
I think you're rocking. When I saw you this morning, I thought, that's cool. If I had any hair, I might try it.
Just let everyone know. I have a quick question that I realized that I should have asked earlier. On the council assignments that you sent through emails, does that go through a meeting at all, or is that just our assignments?
We
now?
just make it.
That's kind of what I thought, but I missed it and I didn't want to.
I'll get with you first of March and start looking for July.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Okay,
So
So-
they meet.
after the meeting, I want to talk to you for just a second.
Okay,
That's,
sounds good.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
is that okay with you, Katie, if Logan makes the motion?
He made it last time too. Good job, Logan, but I'll second it.
It's Monson and Perkins, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Work it, buddy.
Hey, before.
We didn't set a record, but we were close.
You're
Typically with the
doing good. We're doing good.
I tried
Yeah,
to,
it was
at least quarterly because it just wasn't
In a
happening.
lot of
Like
ways,
an official meeting.
kind of the same situation.